welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbul with you at BTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories, and this is of course very important in light of what the international developments are. And we've seen that the officials of the Indian Foreign Ministry and their counterparts in the Afghanistan Taliban regime have met, and official meetings between the two have discussed at varied lengths the discussions around areas of collaboration and possible expansion of those areas. And this is important in particular in terms of understanding what really is the way forward and what's really happening between these two sides. While of course we have seen that India is also among the countries that have not officially recognized the Afghan Taliban regime, they have continued their engagements, opened their embassy very soon as well, post the takeover by the Afghan Taliban regime in 2021. And then of course with reference to the way that both the sides have interacted, it seems that there's a lot of discussion around trade relations, especially with regards to Chabahar port, and what really is going to be the way forward in terms of the repatriation of refugees in Afghanistan, and then of course areas of cooperation including medical health. And so we're going to be taking a look at these particular issues in light of what is going on between the two sides, and then of course the impact that creates on the dynamic with Pakistan, with of course our own dynamic with Afghanistan centering around the fact that safe havens are being provided to terrorist organizations, which of course are adding to the security problems in Pakistan and of course the terrorist activities here. So this is something that of course has been reiterated by the government time and again, but there hasn't been a lot of response with regards to this. So we're going to take a closer look at this developing dynamic and see what really is happening on ground. Our next segment is going to be taking a look at what is happening internationally with of course the Middle Eastern region. Israel has launched a map which includes the territories of Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon and Syria, and this of course is something that has been very heavily objected by other countries, including of course the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia among others. And this is important particularly in terms of how it changes the historical context and how it puts forward Israel's own vision, and of course adds to the instability and uncertainty of the Middle Eastern region. While of course these condemnations are welcome and there is a lot of rhetoric going on in terms of how that adds to the escalation of the Middle Eastern region and how this is completely in violation of international resolutions and of course is unacceptable, it remains to be seen what really happens of such a claim that has been made, and of course this map with reference to that. That is going to be our discussion in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios I've been joined by senior analyst Furrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by former ambassador Mr. BALUCH. Thank you very much, BALUCH, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And with reference to of course the way that we want to move forward, I want to start with you in terms of how you see this engagement between the Indian Foreign Ministry officials and their counterparts in Afghanistan and what really it signifies.
Thank you, Sana. I think this is an important development as far as Afghanistan is concerned. And I think there is a kind of a mutual interest for both the countries. For India, it has a security, economic, and a strategic interest in Afghanistan. And while same goes also for Taliban, that they have economic interest as well as political or strategic significance of this relationship. Coming to India, I think India sees Afghanistan as a place where the non-state actors, especially the jihadists, have for the last now 5-6 decades, that has been a kind of epicenter. So it wants to have a closer look at the phenomena as to how and these jihadist outfits are doing. So they want to have a closer look, and that can only be possible if they are able to be on ground and have a communication link with the Taliban. For the economic, definitely they are working on and they have invested in Chabahar port in Iran, and so is the case with Afghanistan. They are interested to have so this north-south connectivity in which both the countries are interested. And strategically, if you look at it, it is because China is investing in Afghanistan. It is quite closely engaged with Afghanistan. In fact, one of the Afghan Taliban envoy is already there in Beijing. So it wants to also checkmate also R2C, that it also does not give all the space to China, because Afghanistan remains again strategically very important for the region because of its connectivity to the Central Asian states. So I think opening of dialogue with Taliban is again also it can be because we remember that during the last regime, Ashraf Ghani's regime, India had a whole series of consulate, I think 5 or 6, and they were all listening posts. And of course, whatever they were doing against Pakistan, we all know that. So they don't want to lose it again as a listening post, as a place from where they can monitor the non-state actors. They can, if they want to still pursue from Afghanistan those activities that they have been pursuing in Pakistan. So I think there is this kind of convergence of interest. And I think Afghanistan, I'll just add one more, that Afghanistan also wants to balance Pakistan, its relationship with Pakistan, because there has been tension between the two countries. So by closing up to India, in a way, it's a signal to Pakistan that we have some kind of an option. So that will be my opening statement, Sana.
Right. Faisal, I want your take on this too, because there is, of course, a lot of discussion in terms of what the reports are coming out and the kind of discussions that are taking place with reference to these meetings. And there is a lot of course, emphasis also on trade relations, on refugees repatriation, and of course, other areas that can be provided in terms of the two countries interacting. I want your take on whether or not, A, that is the only dynamic with reference to what we're seeing between the two sides, and whether or not there is something else that is also happening at the back end. And at the same time, the very emphasis of trade relations, particularly through the Chabahar port, how is that going to go about?
Yes, and obviously when we talk about India, India always comes up with these kind of statements that this is what their intentions are, that they want to, of course, have good relations with the Taliban regime and whatever the regime it is. And this won't be the first time they are going to utilize Afghanistan as a launching pad against their foes. Of course, they have a keen eye on China, as well as, of course, they always have kept an eye on Pakistan. And when it comes to exploiting Pakistan's western front, of course, they have been doing it since long. And now they want to try it with Taliban. Most welcome. I mean, I'm so happy that they have thought so. And I am, I'm wishing them very well. And I would request them to put more billions of dollars into Afghanistan, like they did during the Ghani regime, like they did during the previous regimes as well, whenever they have been trying to exploit it. I think it's good that they are tunneling or funneling money in there, but if they are going to utilize the sort of grounds of Afghanistan, then of course Afghanistan, especially the Taliban, they shouldn't be forgetting that they have pledged that their land should never be used against any of the neighboring countries. Of course, Pakistan is a neighboring country, and so far they have been using it, and if they openly want to use it, I think they must do it. And I would request India to send in the troops as well to assist Taliban how to, of course, take care of their own region, because their own region is so volatile when it comes to provinces with adjacent to Pakistan's border. Of course, they need somebody's assistance, and I think Indians can provide them with the defense assistance as well, and the assistance to, of course, figure out where all of these terrorists are. And I think it would be amazing to see the Indian troops coming into Afghanistan, and then whatever happens later on, that would be next episode. But so far, of course, I can wish them very well for whatever they are going to do in Afghanistan. About Chabahar, of course, these designs they have been carrying out since a long time. Of course, they have very good relations with Iran. Iran is a country that has always had problems in, of course, selling its oil, and we know that they are sending India with the 325,000 barrels a day crude oil, which of course it's a huge factor of their own economy. Yes, when it comes to other countries, America, it stops them to deal or to have trade with Iran. But of course, India is Anokha Ladla, and of course they would never mind as long as India is doing this kind of trade with Iran, with all of its nefarious designs. And we know that why they have been of course utilizing Chabahar. They want to of course use it as an alternate or as a challenge to Gwadar, as a challenge to Karachi. Most welcome. I mean, they are most welcome to do whatever they want to do there, as long as they are not sending in Kulbhushan Jadavs and any more Abhinandans. That's fine with us. And if they are going to send, I mean, previously Iran was used as a sort of a launching pad, and Kulbhushan Jadhav has been entering in Afghanistan as well during the Ghani regime, and that's how he got caught in Pakistan. Now there will be many more Kulbhushan Jadhavs, and this time around, of course, when somebody is caught, that would be shown to Taliban regime as well, and then we will be seeing what Taliban regime does with that. And by the way, history tells us again and again, I am talking about the most recent history after the Second World War, history tells us again and again, no matter how hard somebody tries to penetrate in Afghanistan, to utilize Afghanistan against Pakistan, I mean, not for a long time, not a sustainable route to of course utilize it against Pakistan. They want to try their luck, most welcome, they can do it. If they can find their leverage in there, then somebody else can find their leverage there as well. That's why I am hinting to Indians to at least send in troops so that we can have another theater.
Right, and I want your take on that, Furrukh, as well, in terms of what has been suggested also. But add to that in terms of what that really means, of course, on ground, what the situation is like, and the kind of dynamic that has always existed with reference to Pakistan, both in terms of India and Afghanistan, and of course the current scenario that we are in, and the kind of fight against terrorism that Pakistan continues within its own borders. How will this particular dynamic impact that?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I hope that you'll forgive me if I don't choose to comment on my friend's opinion. What I'm going to actually do is, India has had this policy since very inception, not to befriend the neighbors, but to befriend the neighbors of the neighbors, right? It is essentially an idea borrowed from Kautilya or Chanakya, his book Arthashastra. And that actually gives them this belief that they can always expand and conquer more territories in collusion with the other side. Having said that, Afghanistan and India both have been actually messy, and they have both found ways to work together in the past as well. So at this moment, when Afghan-Taliban meet, when Harry meets Sally, when Afghan-Taliban meet India, it is just formalization of a fling that continued for quite some time. I think that anybody who tells you that when Afghan-Taliban was struggling to regain power, at that time, because TTP was continuously attacking Pakistan, and they would not disavow them, right, publicly. So anybody who would tell you that there was no possibility of India and Afghan-Taliban working in tandem, they were fooling us. Why would that be? The fact is that 10 years ago, India's National Security Advisor went to Shastra University, and he said that don't frighten us by the name of Taliban, because Taliban are mercenaries, and whatever Pakistan pays them, we can double that amount and they will be ours. Just let them sort Pakistan out, and once that is done, we will take care of the business, because in Afghanistan, India is the most popular country. So at this moment, I think that all those people who were celebrating when Afghan-Taliban took over, they should know better now, right? That is not all. I think that Chabahar's name was mentioned. One thing is for sure, this was an idea which was actually broached by Hamid Karzai, when he was president of Afghanistan, he actually went out of the way in collaboration with India, because they used to have this issue that Pakistan is not allowing two-way transit trade, so they wanted to bypass Pakistan. And that's why America actually invested a humongous amount, and India actually invested humongous amount to build road network that extends from Chabahar to Kabul. But that is a story of the past. They'll continue to do something of the same sort. But unfortunately, the question is, why is it that Pakistan was blinded by this obvious thing, that we kept on thinking that perhaps our boys were taking over Afghanistan? The question then is, who was telling us that? It is not a measure of how much Afghan Taliban have changed. It is a measure of the fact that somebody in Pakistan willfully wanted to turn a blind eye or deaf ear to whatever was going on. Because these people, especially when you read Mullah Zaif's book and the kind of language that is used, these people never forgave Pakistan for allowing the Western countries to actually take over Afghanistan and displacing Afghan Taliban. Remember, at this moment, the question that arises, Sana, is if this convenience, marriage of convenience was going on before, why is it that they formally had to hitch the wagon? And that is for one reason and one reason alone. And the reason is Donald Trump. Because of Donald Trump's onslaught and his the promise of him taking over, there are two things that are in question. One, billions of dollars kept on coming to Afghan Taliban in recent years, right? Why would that be? Pakistan, if Pakistan had that kind of clout, that billions of dollars would have come to Pakistan. Instead, did not happen. It kept on going to Afghanistan. So on whose behest? Of course, India was requesting that send these monies. On the other side, of course, these monies are going to be stopped very soon. And the second thing that is important to know is that Donald Trump is going to investigate what exactly happened and why is it that America had to withdraw from the country at a time and in a shape when things actually went awry. So because of that, India, which thought that Donald Trump is going to help them out, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Narendra Modi sent his external affairs minister to Washington, D.C. to get an invite to the oath-taking ceremony of Donald Trump. So far as I know, there hasn't been any invitation. So I think that Indians are trying to hedging the bet, so are Afghan Taliban. But for everybody who was in Pakistan and they thought that Afghan Taliban's takeover is going to change things in favor of Pakistan, they need to hold themselves accountable, or then history will hold them accountable.
Right, and Ambassador Saab, I want your take on that as well, particularly in terms of how we look back at what has been going on, particularly from the Pakistani perspective. And of course, we have put forward those years. Of course, we've highlighted what's happening in Afghanistan and India. We've highlighted the role of spoilers and, of course, the kind of actions that are taken in collusion. But I want your take in terms of what exactly is it that Pakistan can possibly do with regards to this emerging dynamic, particularly now in terms of the kind of historical mistrust that we feel and have experienced with Afghanistan, and then of course the kind of history we have with India, and the region and the role of Pakistan in this particular geopolitical scenario. I want your take on what that means for our future course of action with both these countries.
Yes, and I think it's a million-dollar question. And I think a real challenge for our foreign policy czar sitting in Islamabad. But in our own humble view, we could, given our own opinion, Pakistan has made mistakes in Afghanistan. Not today, not yesterday, but since the Russian invasion and our decision as a country to be part of the Western alliance later, after 9/11. Then, of course, that history remained kind of burden on us. So there is a series of wrong decisions that we have taken, and I think the recent one, which was alluded to by one of our Mr. Pitafi, that how did we imagine that these Taliban would become ours when they take over the power, and we in a way celebrated that. A lot of our leaders celebrated, very senior leaders. So it was a short-sighted thing. Little we knew that historically, Delhi and Afghanistan have been very, very close. Even Zahir Shah, India had the closest of relationships with Kabul. And then later, after the Soviet takeover, those relationships never went down. And Taliban, yes, during the jihad, we were the frontline state in terrorism to our biggest fully as a nation. And I think we are paying all that now. Our people are paying with their blood and tears. The casualty that we have had in the past few decades, terrorism, and the rise of TTP, all these are the price that we are paying for being part of that war, which was never ours. I think we have to concede this as a nation. We should, and I entirely agree, that we have to look back, hold ourselves responsible, so that whatever we do in the future has to be based on reality, on ground. Now, you also asked that what can be done. Obviously, we cannot wish away Afghanistan, we cannot wish away India. So I think we have to find a way out that this alliance, which should not be an unholy alliance against Pakistan. How can that be done? That we should try and rebuild our trust with Afghan Taliban by way of talks, negotiations, and of course, using our leverages that I have been already earlier in your program been saying that Pakistan is not without leverage. We do have leverage against Taliban, but obviously that has to be used with prudence. With prudence, and at the same time, we have to make sure that Afghanistan does not fall completely into the Indian orbit. That has to be made sure. So I think this requires a real diplomacy to be deployed in terms of Afghanistan and also with India. I think I know these are very difficult times for Pakistan. These are very challenging times for Pakistan foreign policy in terms of both the neighbors, that is India as well as Afghanistan. But this is where the historical challenges come for a country when the nation stands together. It looks at its faults, rectifies them, and chart out a new way out and a new path towards establishing a realistic, I think what I would say the key word should be a realistic, pragmatic, and a foreign policy which is based on our national interests. That should define our relationship with Afghanistan. As far as India is concerned, obviously we have kind of perennial difficulties with this entity, and which have compounded after the takeover of the ultra-nationalist RSS BJP government in Delhi. So I think we got to be strong as a nation. We need to be united as a nation, and we need to be pragmatic, practical, and totally non-emotional as far as Afghanistan is concerned, as far as India is concerned. Yes, sir.
Absolutely, and I completely understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. But Ambassador Saab, if you can also highlight how we can possibly achieve that or move forward with that in terms of having successful goals achieved or having a better relationship to be achieved, while we have the kind of responses that we do from both these countries. Pakistan can, of course, put forward its own diplomatic efforts and put forward a stance which helps in this situation. But what if that is not returned? What if that stance is not reciprocated? What if the kind of response that you can hope for isn't there from both India and Afghanistan? We've seen that previously as well happen. So in that case, then what options are left for a country like Pakistan?
I think I would not like to comment that there will be a kind of a common denominator and we deal with India and Afghanistan with the same kind of approach. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, we obviously can talk to those people. There are lots of segments of Afghan society. There are a lot of people in the Taliban regime which have roots into Pakistan. They are sympathetic to Pakistan, that we should speak to them. And also we must not ignore the opposition in the north. And we should start talking to the Tajiks and other denominations and other political forces which have gone into hiding or they have gone into defensive. And I think there is some kind of a movement on that. And of course, we should speak to other regional countries which also see the Taliban regime as a regional threat because they're not able to control state actors from launching terrorist actions against all other countries. So I think we need to kind of evolve a regional consensus. We should include the Central Asian states, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and of course China, which are our good friend, and Iran. And I think we should perhaps have that meeting of minds among the regional countries to come up with a regional approach to dealing with Afghanistan. And also we should pressurize those countries which were guarantors for the implementation of Doha agreement. I don't know why people have forgotten that there was something. It was just not a piece of paper that they wrote it, signed it, and just forgot about it, and now they have their own way. I think that is where Pakistan needs to talk to those countries. And of course, there is this issue of still dollars pouring in into Afghanistan, which definitely would be filtering down to TTP and all other non-state actors which are free to go and free to live. After all, how do they sustain thousands of fighters, their families, and so on and so forth? So that it all requires. So I think we need to also look at how the money is being financed. How are these outfits being financed? So we need to talk to them separately, and we obviously have to deal with India with an entirely different approach, and that can be discussed in some other program. Yes, Sana.
Right, absolutely. Ambassador, we're now going to move on to our next segment, and I also want your take on that before we let you go. With reference to what has been happening in the Middle East, of course, it's very, very important to take a look at the kind of ambitions that Israel puts forward. And while it has been very vocal about it in the past too, we've seen that there has been a launch of a map which includes Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine. And this is something that, of course, has been objected by Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and other countries, and of course is against international norms and resolutions, and is a violation of these understandings. But I want your take of the context in which this has come out, the fact that there is a lot of concern with regards to what these ambitions are from Israel, what they claim, and the kind of actions, of course, that are taking place, with the genocide continuing as we speak, and the fact that so much of what has been violated or what has been carried out, even the genocide itself, is largely ignored, and there hasn't been a lot of response or consequence to it at all. So what really is the significance then if such a country is releasing a map that's against historical norms when we know that all of its other actions are also?
Yes, Sarah, it's what is happening in the Middle East, a genocidal war, which is unfortunately condoned by Israel's Western supporters. It is a travesty of truth. It's a travesty of the laws. It's violation of all the norms of civilized living. So I think it is continuation showing off any map where they have this grandiose scheme of having greater Israel. It is a scheme which they have dreamt of, but whether will that be implemented? Will it be possible to really have Israel extend to Lebanon and Jordan and beyond? I think these are all kind of distractions for that by those extremists which are in power now in Israel, which unfortunately are also supported by those ideologically blind people who blindly support Israel without keeping in mind their own basically constitutions, their own commitments to the international law, their own commitments to their own people for that matter. So I think this is continuation of Israel's extremist leaders' propensity to come up with these maps. I think this map was also styled in UN by Netanyahu before 7th October. So I think we are at a juncture of history where unfortunately the victims are on the receiving side, but history does not remain static. It has cyclical. Time will come when the perpetrators will be called as perpetrators, not otherwise. So what is happening now is that the victims are being dumped as the perpetrators, and the perpetrators of cruelty are being termed as victims. So I think the history will rectify it ultimately. So I think what I could say, the word is steadfastness. That has to be observed by the Palestinians, by the Muslims, and by the Arab world.
Thank you very much, Ambassador BALUCH, for joining us and being a part of our discussion in the debate today. Faisal, I'd like your perspective on this as well, with reference to, of course, what we've seen happen in the past year or more. There is, of course, a lot of concern also, not just in terms of what goes on in Palestine, but also in terms of the escalation to the Middle Eastern region. And while, of course, it's not a conflict of what's happening in Palestine, I want your take on what happens then if the larger Middle Eastern region, of course, is also involved in this escalation and this crisis situation, and of course impacts the entire region and the world. Is that not something, if we ignore all the other issues, including humanitarian ones which are being ignored, is that at least not an issue for communities around the world, that this can spill over to them?
It should be, it is, and I think it will be. Sarah, this is what happens when donkeys, they start pretending to be horses, and that is what is happening. I mean, few minions from Eastern Europe, they just turned up one day in the land of Palestine and started calling themselves Semites, and they are not even Semites, And when it comes to expansions, I mean, expansions, it has been seen previously as well. Hitler, after the genocide, he expanded, and in 1945, whatever the world saw about Hitler, it was there. I mean, Germany wanted to expand itself, and the way it got busted, I mean, somebody punctured its balloon there and then. After that, we saw that Russia wanted to expand itself in shape of Soviets. They did so, and then later on, whatever happened to them, it's in front of everyone. Now there are two countries that are still believing in narcissist ideologies. They have psychological problems. They are simply psychos. One of them is our eastern neighbor. It keeps on bragging about Akhand Bharat. It feels as if the Bharat is some kind of a huge country, whereas now Pakistan is sitting in the middle, and even Afghanistan as well. And in the east they have a couple of more countries, and they keep on saying that is Akhand Bharat. They have this problem and they want to expand. And if we talk about today's Israel, which my leader once called that it's an illegitimate offspring of the West, and yes, it is an illegitimate offspring of the West, and now it shows everyone with the map and claims that some 3,500 years ago this was the promised land. I don't know what kind of la la land they're living in. I mean, if they want to expand, of course they can carry on dreaming about it, and when the world finally comes to terms with it by Nix or Nox, or claiming that there is too much of chaos in the region and it's better to hand over all the land to the Israel, then of course that security state in shape of Israel, till what time it can prolong itself, that would be, of course, a matter of seeing how it can persist in there. I mean, right now, situation is that the Jewish people who actually claimed that they wanted to stay in Israel, after seeing all of this madness, I mean, their own actual Jews, they have started leaving that mass. Reason being, I mean, they claim that first of all, in accordance to their testaments, the Old Testaments, they are not supposed to be sort of murdering others and take the land. That land is going to be given to them as a promised land, as a gift from the God. This is what their belief is. That's why they themselves, they stand in the favor of Palestine and not in the favor of Israel. And they say that Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. Same is the case with the Hindutva ideology. I mean, it has nothing to do with the Hinduism as a religion. And Hindutva ideology and Zionism, both of them, they are hand and glove, and frankly, both of them psychopaths. They need a doctor rather than their claim to be portrayed everywhere in the world. When it comes to, of course, the Middle Eastern countries, I'm pretty much sure all of the countries, they are equipped enough when posed with a challenge, when there is nothing left and nobody is there to play its role. If United Nations wants to turn itself into League of Nations, most welcome, they must do it. League of Nations failed just because of one reason: they couldn't stop a genocide in the Europe, and they couldn't stop Germany from expansions. And then later on, of course, we saw that United Nations, I mean, League of Nations was gone. United Nations is still there. Now it's turn of United Nations. If United Nations really believes in globalism, if really believes in rights of all other countries, then of course they need to look into this matter. If they don't see it, then of course everyone would like to have their affairs in their own hands. And if somebody wants to make a hell out of this world, then most welcome, everyone is allowed to do whatever they want. If there is no ultimate power that is going to stay and stand with the justice, with the rule of law, with the international law, then most welcome to the La La Land, and then most welcome to, if somebody wants to create an alienism in this world, then that's it. They have chosen it.
Right. And Furrukh, I want your perspective on this too, in terms of what we have seen coming in from countries like Qatar, UAE and Saudi Arabia. There is condemnation, there is opposition to this particular stance, and this is something really important in terms of any act of accountability or any act to oppose what has been going on. While of course there are so many other dynamics also at play, it seems that this is something unacceptable and this is something that will garner reaction. But will that be something, what will be enough to garner something that is an actual response to such measures, that is an actual response to the genocide, actual response to hostilities and all-out expansion that Israel seems to be putting forward with this map?
All right, Sana, again, thank you very much. I just wanted to, I thought better not to actually interrupt when Faisal was speaking, but I wanted to actually give my perspective. It usually comes down to me to work as a talking corrigendum. First of all, it is not our job to decide who is Jewish and who is not.
Sure.
They usually maintain their pedigree and they have very solid proof that whosoever is a claimant of being Jewish, they are entitled to that claim. One more thing regarding UN and League of Nations. League of Nations actually failed to stop a world war. The day UN actually fails to do that, I will think that UN's time is over, but I don't think that time has come yet. And finally, I wanted to praise one man also, and that is Pope Francis, for categorically condemning whatever is going on in Palestine. I think this is a hallmark of leadership, that people have that clear-eyed vision of what is going on there. I'm saying this because there seems to be, again, there was a reference connecting Zionism with the Hindutva ideology. There is a clear difference between Hindu version of interpretation of history and our monotheistic, or for that matter Abrahamic vision. And that actually, this time, the problem lies with our fanatics, not Indian fanatics. They don't believe in any kind of accelerationism because they have the cyclical version of history. So things keep on changing, and repeatedly there are going to be cycles. It is Kal Yug now, then it is going to be a better Yug later. But Muslims, Christians and Jewish are united, the extremists are united in their desire to bring an end to this world, right? And so the Jewish people actually, their fanatics believe that the end is coming, so they have to accelerate whatever is happening, right? Similarly, when you talk about evangelists, and by the way, today's Israel is not being financially backed by Jewish people, it is essentially being sponsored by evangelist Christians who believe that until the second coming of Christ, Israel has to be fattened up, and then the second coming will happen, and then Christ will destroy Israel. Until then, of course, it has to be Greater Israel, which includes many parts of Jordan, Syria, most of Syria, some parts of Saudi Arabia, and most of Palestine as well. So at this moment, it is a dog whistle, this map, and it is a signal to those people. But similarly, because I have spoken about Christians and Jewish, I wanted to also point out that this has been a problem with our fanatics also. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, they also wanted to accelerate. They used to call these wars end of times wars, right? Right now, my humble submission is that first of all, it is important to call a spade, and then hope that someday history prevails and takes people, make people accountable. But right now, whatever Israel is doing is shameful and shameless.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Furrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. As always, that's all that we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.